All right, in the last lesson, we went ahead and essentially created this background. So if we press play in our game, you could see it loads up this background image. Like I said, I might end up just taking this city background here and maximizing it a little, like scaling it up a little bit so that it fits the size. Let's see if I could just do this with my arrow key. So we could, maybe we'll just make the primary focus, of our level here, just that little area there. I don't know, I'm going to play with this a little bit as we, just for aesthetics, see how it looks. So for example, if I press play now, you can see the primary area of that is this little park, which might be cool. And maybe we could, we'll have it follow the player and we'll have it like really, yeah, let's figure that out later. So anyway, the focus of this video is essentially we're going to go ahead and create a player. So let's start by making a new scene and go up to the top here and press the plus button to add a new scene. And what we're looking to do essentially is create essentially an empty node. And this node is going to have physics on it so that it'll fall, and we'll be using a rigid body 2D physics for this. And if we click on other node here, it brings up our create node search, and I'm just going to type in rigid body 2D. Now, if you're not familiar with rigid bodies, because you haven't done my other lectures in Unity or Unreal or whatever, or what have you, a rigid body, and they explain it down here, implements full 2D physics. So you can imagine, to keep it short, like what is an element of physics? Gravity, right? So you can add this to this object and it'll give it gravity. It'll actually fall. So let's go ahead and set that up. So I'm gonna hit create here. And something else I need to do is we have this rigid body and it exists in this corner here, but it doesn't have an image, right? It doesn't have anything. And if you look here, we have this warning and it says this node has no shape. So you make sure to add a collision shape 2D, collision polygon 2D as a child to define this shape. And like I said, all this does now is if I press play, you'll see, oops, it looks like I have to save this. Let's save this as player. And we're going to save this in our scenes folder. And I'm going to go ahead and overwrite that one. It looks like there was one that was sitting in there from before. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this. I'm going to press play again. And you're not seeing anything fall. But if I, I'm getting a lot of these errors. If I right click on this, I hit add child node and I go to sprite, and then I go to sprite 2D here, I can actually add my police officer. So let's see, here's my police officer, PNG. And it looks like there's some shape missing and there's some stuff going on down here. And if I press play, this will play all of my scenes together. So you're going to notice like nothing has happened yet, right? So we have to actually save this scene. And if we press play, we should now see my character. He's not showing up. Let's see, rigid body. And I know we still have that collision error. And actually, let's change this rigid body 2D to player. And we don't necessarily want to see, this will show all of this will run the project. What we want to do is this individual scenes button here. So if I press this, that's going to show us our individual scene. And you'll notice that my character is huge because my screen size is only this big. So some of you might be like, well, I'll just go into the player section here and I'll adjust the scale. You always want to adjust your art in the application before you bring it in. You don't have to play with any numbers in here. You always want your transforms to be 1. And what happens is we get a little lazy and we just start editing inside of the viewport and start editing inside the engine instead of editing scale and stuff inside the application. So how do we do this? Well, I'm going to right click on this and I'm just going to do show file in manager. Now this will give me my police officer and my burglar and my police car. Now if you don't have Photoshop installed, I'm going to show you how to do this in a free program that's a website loaded with ads, which can get a little bit frustrating, but it's called Photopea. But again, it's free, which is really great. So let me pause the video and open up Photopea. All right, so here we have Photopea. As I mentioned, they have ads running on the corner, but that's completely okay because we're getting it for free. And I'm just going to open up that folder, and I'm going to drag in a police officer here. And then you'll notice there's this little tab section. I can actually grab my burglar and drop it up there, and you can see now I have 2 tabs. This burglar still has the background. It's not transparent, and this police officer has this little area here. So the first thing I can do with my police officer is I'm going to hit C as in Charlie and just crop this down because we don't need all of that extra space. So I really only want my police officer here. And then I'm going to hit Z and I'm going to zoom in at the bottom here. Just move my mouse to the right. I'm going to hold spacebar to pan. And then I'm going to press W, and that's this wand tool, and that'll allow me to select these little areas. Make sure to select your layer. And I'm going to hold Shift and just click through all of these extra little bits here. I don't need them. Later I can paint in or hand paint in my own shadow for this character. And I'm just going to press delete to get rid of those. If you need to, you can, I'm going to hit Control D to deselect, and I can hit E in here, and I can just kind of erase anything else in here that I don't like. Now, if I, let's see, hit spacebar, if I go ahead and hit Control S to save this, and I jump back into Godot, you can see it cleaned it up. But the scale is still off, right? So if I look at this scene itself and I press play, you can see he's still massive. And my scene here is pretty tiny, so I need him to be a much smaller size. All right, so let's jump back into Photo P and edit this. All right, here we are in Photo P, and I'm going to go to Image, and I'm going to go down to Size here. And if we go to inches here, you'll see this is 7 inches by 9 inches. That's a pretty big character. And if our pixels are 527 by 649, our entire screen size, I think, was 720 by 480. So I'm going to leave it locked, but I'm going to just take this guy down to maybe, I don't know, 64, and then hit OK. And then I'll, and yes, we are going to lose some quality, right, by doing that. You know, he's a little more pixelated. But again, this isn't the point of this game. You know, I didn't create this art, so it's going to, you know, I'd like to, you know, make my own art. And so with that, I'll be more concerned. This is more of a prototype. So let's just go ahead and do File and Save here. All right, here we are back in Godot, and you can see, again, if I press play, he's much tinier. Sadly, until I link them together, you're not going to see him in the scene and scale, but we can, again, modify all of this stuff later. All right, so let's go ahead and create essentially a capsule around our character that's going to handle collision. So when our character bumps into people or bumps into the burglars, it will detect when our character is touching it. Right now, all we have is this player object, which is a rigid body 2D, which is adding gravity. So for example, we turn our gravity scale to 0 here, and I play this scene, you'll see that, let's see, come on, play. Oh, our character is actually not on its pivot point. So let's go ahead and let's see. Make sure that we reset its, let's go up here, rigid body. This should be here. Okay, good. So now when we press play, you should be able to see the bottom part of our character here, which was off center. But notice that it didn't fall, right? So if I go to my player collision object here, we took our gravity, we made it 0. If I turn that back on to 1 and I play that scene, you're going to see my character fall. So let's actually turn that off. And what I want to do is, as this character's falling, if I was going to make another object for our game, like I said, the burglar, and I want this character to be able to detect its collision with that burglar object, it's going to need a collision object. So I'm going to go to Add Child Node here, and what I want to do is add a collision 2D object. Collision shape 2D. And you'll notice that that error on the original one went away. Now this one's saying a shape must be provided for collision shape 2D. All this says is, hey, we want to have collision, but what does that shape look like that we want to modify? We're under this shape where it says empty. Go ahead and click that and click capsule shape 2D. And then what we can do is we can modify this so that it's roughly the shape of our character here, because he's kind of capsule shaped. That's why I went with this. So let's go ahead and save that. And now we shouldn't have any more, not necessarily errors, but warnings. Now what I want to show you is if we select our player here, and let's see, our sprite 2D. Come on. And everything sort of is off center from where it was. You can always go into the essentially the transform of each one. Let's see, this one. And just hit this reset, and it'll reset it back to its original position. Okay, I think that's good for now. Just make sure that you save all your scenes, and then in the next scene, we'll go into essentially Photo P. We'll clean up our burglar, and then I'll leave the car to you to do on your own, and then we'll set this up so that we can essentially instance or multiply the burglar around our scene.